My name is Margaret Harris, and I am 68 years old. At this stage of life, I thought I understood grief. I thought I had already faced the worst of what life could take from me. But nothing prepared me for the phone call that told me my son was gone. They said it was a car accident, late at night, a slick road, and bad luck. People whispered words like tragic and sudden, and I nodded, because what else was I supposed to do? Still, deep inside me, something never felt right. The days after his death passed in a blur. I walked through my house like a ghost, clutching at pieces of him that lingered in the photos on the walls or the jacket still hanging by the door. Everyone told me accidents happen, that I needed to accept it. But every time I closed my eyes, I felt a knot in my chest, a voice that kept repeating, "This wasn't just an accident." Maybe it was the way he had sounded the last time we spoke, nervous, distracted, like he was carrying something he couldn't tell me. Maybe it was the hollow look in his wife's eyes when she embraced me at the hospital. Too rehearsed, too controlled. I can't explain it fully. All I know is that a mother knows when something doesn't add up. I am not here to relive my pain for the sake of it. I am here because the truth has a way of clawing its way out, no matter how deeply someone tries to bury it. If you stay with me, you'll understand why I couldn't simply accept the story I was given. Tomorrow is his funeral, and after that, the reading of his will. That's where everything truly begins. The church was heavy with silence, the kind that presses against your chest until it's hard to breathe. The smell of lilies clung to the air, thick and cloying, reminding me that this was real, no matter how much I wanted to wake up from it. I sat near the front, my hands folded tight in my lap, watching the polished coffin that held my son. People came and went, offering their rehearsed condolences, their practiced sighs, and yet the only sound I truly heard was the thud of my own heartbeat. And then there was Victoria. My daughter-in-law looked like the perfect widow dressed in black, her head bowed, tears falling neatly down her cheeks. Everyone whispered about her strength, her grace, how she managed to keep herself together. But to me, it felt like a performance. There was no tremble in her voice, no rawness in her grief, just a mask that never slipped. I tried to tell myself it was my own bitterness speaking, that maybe I wanted to blame someone because the truth was too unbearable. But each time I looked at her, I felt that knot in my chest tighten. After the service, we gathered in a cramped lawyer's office for the reading of the will. The mood was somber, but there was a hum beneath it, like everyone was waiting for the big reveal. I sat quietly, my palms damp, bracing myself. When the lawyer announced that Victoria was to receive the bulk of his estate, the house, the accounts, the investments, no one looked surprised. She smiled faintly, as though she had been expecting it all along. And then the lawyer read my part. My son had left me only one thing, an old farmhouse, a property that had been in our family for decades, long neglected, half forgotten. At first, I didn't know what to feel. Was this his way of leaving me behind, a gesture of sentiment, or a burden he no longer wanted to carry? But deep down, I knew better. My son had been deliberate in everything he did. If he left me that farmhouse, there was a reason. I could see Victoria's face when she glanced at me, her eyes narrowing for just a second before she returned to her polished composure. That single flicker told me everything. I wasn't meant to question this inheritance, but she was worried I would. As we left the office, I felt the pull of that farmhouse in my chest. I had avoided it for years, But now, it seemed to be calling me, asking me to step inside and uncover what he had hidden there. Whatever answers I was searching for, I knew they wouldn't be found in this town, or in whispered condolences. They were waiting for me within those weathered walls. And so, with grief heavy in my heart but suspicion burning brighter than ever, I made up my mind I would go to the farmhouse. That's where my real journey would begin. The drive to the farmhouse felt longer than it should have been. The road stretched out endlessly, lined with bare trees that clawed at the sky, their branches rattling against the wind. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than I realized, as though holding on could keep me steady against the tide of memories rushing in. I hadn't been out to that property in years. My son had loved the place when he was younger, running through the fields, building forts in the barn, begging me to let him sleep on the porch during summer nights. Those images came back so vividly, it hurt. When I finally turned onto the gravel driveway, the farmhouse loomed ahead, weathered and gray, its windows like tired eyes watching me approach. The air felt heavier here, as if it carried the weight of everything left unsaid between me and my son. I stepped out of the car, crunching over the stones, and for a moment, I just stood there, staring at the door, wondering what he wanted me to find. Inside, the air was still, stale, but not abandoned. The first thing I noticed was the coffee pot on the counter. It was warm to the touch. Too warm. My chest tightened as I looked around, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe someone from the town had been keeping an eye on the place, but deep down, I knew better. In the living room, a wooden chair was pulled slightly toward the window, angled at the driveway as if someone had been watching for visitors. On the side table sat a pair of binoculars, still smudged from use. I picked them up, the cold metal biting into my skin, and set them back quickly, my pulse racing. Then I found the notebook. It was tucked beneath a stack of old magazines, but it looked new, its pages filled with scribbled numbers, license plates, dozens of them. Some I recognized as local, but others were strange, written with underlines and circles, as if they were important. I ran my finger over the ink, my mind spinning. What had my son been tracking here, who had been pulling into this driveway? The memories of the last year pressed against me. He had grown distant, distracted, calls cut short, visits postponed, eyes always scanning the room as though he carried a secret too heavy to share. I thought it was just the stress of work, or maybe the strain of his marriage. But standing there in that farmhouse, surrounded by evidence of something darker, I realized I had been blind. The coffee pot, the chair, the binoculars, the notebook, they weren't relics of my son's life. They were signs that someone had been here, maybe even still was. A chill swept over me, sharper than the wind that rattled the old windows. I wasn't alone in this place, and that's when the fear settled deep inside me, whatever had happened to my son. It hadn't been an accident, and this farmhouse wasn't just an inheritance. It was a message. I knew then that I had to keep searching, no matter the cost. What I found here was only the beginning. I began searching the farmhouse more carefully, drawn by the unease that wouldn't let me rest. Upstairs, in a narrow hallway closet, I noticed a loose panel at the back. My fingers trembled as I pulled it away, revealing a metal box wedged deep behind the wood. Inside were folders, photographs, and a small flash drive. My heart pounded as I carried everything to the old kitchen table, spreading the papers out one by one. The first file was filled with bank statements, large transfers that didn't make sense, money disappearing into offshore accounts. The dates stretched back over a year, each transaction carefully noted in my son's handwriting. My stomach turned as I realized this wasn't just financial stress. He had been following the trail of something much bigger. Then came the photographs. I held them under the weak kitchen light, each one sharper than the last. Victoria, my daughter-in-law, meeting men I didn't recognize. Dim parking garages, expensive restaurants. Her hand sliding envelopes across tables. Some of the men had faces I recalled from news stories. Names tied to organized crime. My son had been following her, documenting everything. The weight of betrayal sank into me. All those nights when he had seemed distant, distracted, when his eyes carried a burden he wouldn't share. This was why. He had been watching the woman he once trusted with his life, and he had been doing it alone. I was still staring at the evidence when the floor creaked behind me. My body went cold. Slowly, I turned, and there she was, Victoria, framed in the doorway of the farmhouse kitchen. She wasn't wearing the mask of the grieving widow anymore. Her eyes were sharp, her smile thin and cruel. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her presence alone was enough to make my skin prickle. She walked closer, her heels clicking against the old wood, and with every step, the air grew heavier. She glanced at the papers on the table, then back at me, and her smile tightened. In that moment, I saw her clearly for the first time. Not the weeping wife at the funeral, not the fragile woman people pitied. This was someone else entirely calculating, dangerous, utterly unafraid. Her words were calm, almost casual, as she let me know the truth. I had already suspected my son's death was no accident. It had been arranged, and she had been part of it. The room tilted around me. Grief twisted into something darker, rage, disbelief, but also a strange kind of clarity. She warned me to let it go, to pretend I hadn't found anything, to remember my age and my place. I could feel her testing me, waiting for me to shrink back, to play the part of the powerless mother too broken to fight. But I couldn't, not after everything I had seen, not after realizing how close my son had been to uncovering her lies. Fear coursed through me, but so did a steadiness I hadn't expected. I folded the papers slowly, deliberately, and met her gaze without flinching. I didn't answer her threats out loud. Instead, I promised myself in that moment that I wouldn't stop. I would protect the truth, protect my son's name, no matter what she tried to do. Victoria left that farmhouse with her mask back in place, but I knew it had slipped forever. And I knew the danger was only beginning. Somewhere in those walls, in the secrets my son had hidden, there was more, something deeper, something powerful enough that she was willing to kill for it. And I intended to find it. I was drawn to the farmhouse basement like something was pulling me there. The air grew colder as I descended the narrow wooden steps, flashlight trembling in my hand. Against the far wall, half hidden behind an old shelving unit, I saw it a safe, its edges rusted but still strong. My heart hammered as I turned the dial, and to my own surprise, the numbers came back to me, dates only a mother would know. His birthday, the day he graduated, the day he lost his father. The lock clicked open. Inside, I found folders thicker than anything upstairs, records, photographs, but also something more chilling. A small drive labeled in my son's handwriting in case of emergency. My hands shook as I slid it into an old laptop left on the workbench. The screen flickered, and there he was, my son. His face appeared tired, but his eyes were steady. He spoke directly into the camera, as if he knew I would be the one watching. He explained that Victoria was part of a criminal network, laundering money and passing information to men far more dangerous than I could imagine. He had been working undercover with the FBI, gathering evidence, but he couldn't tell me. Not even me. And then came the words that froze me in place. If you're watching this, Mom, it means you're in danger. But I'm alive. Please trust me. I couldn't breathe. Alive after weeks of mourning, after the weight of burying him. I was being told my son hadn't died at all. Relief and anger crashed through me in equal measure. I wanted to scream, to demand how he could put me through such agony. But more than that, I wanted to hold him. Before I could process it, I heard the crunch of tires outside. Headlights swept across the farmhouse windows. Victoria had returned, and she wasn't alone. Voices barked orders, doors slammed. I darted to the back, clutching the drive against my chest. The woods behind the house were dark, but they were my only chance. I stumbled through the trees, branches tearing at my arms, every snap of a twig behind me making my blood run colder. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a strange satellite model I didn't recognize. The screen lit up with his name, my son's name. With shaking fingers, I answered. His voice filled my ears, steady but urgent. He told me he had no choice but to fake his death, that it was the only way to protect me while the investigation closed in on Victoria's network. I sobbed, equal parts fury and relief, but I kept moving, crouching low beneath the trees as flashlights cut through the night behind me. He promised the FBI was minutes away, that I had to stay alive until they arrived. Then the gunfire started. Victoria's people were inside the farmhouse, searching, destroying evidence, shouting to each other. I could hear her too, her voice sharp, furious, no longer hiding what she was. My son's words in my ear steadied me. I pressed myself against the cold earth and waited. The night erupted with sirens and shouts. Red and blue lights flooded the woods, beams slicing through the darkness. Agents in heavy gear stormed the property, their commands breaking through the chaos. Gunshots cracked, then fell silent. I could hear the struggle, the shouts of men being forced down, the clatter of weapons hitting the ground. And then I heard her, Victoria, screaming as they dragged her away, her fury filling the night. Gone was the image of the grieving widow. What they carried away was the woman my son had been tracking all along. I lay there in the dirt, clutching the phone to my ear, his voice still in it, telling me it was over. My chest ached with relief, anger, and overwhelming love. My son was alive. The nightmare had been real, but so was this miracle. And as the night fell quiet, I realized this was not an ending, but a new beginning, one that would carry me into the hardest reflections of my life. It was time to face not only what had been uncovered, but what it meant for me, for him, for everything we thought we knew. And that is where the lessons truly began. When I look back on everything, it almost feels like a story that happened to someone else. I began this journey as a mother crushed by grief, stumbling through the days after losing my son. I thought I was broken beyond repair, left with nothing but sorrow and suspicion. But what I didn't know was that grief was only the beginning, that it would push me into truths I never imagined, and into strength I didn't know I had. I uncovered secrets that changed everything I believed about my family. I faced betrayal, danger, and moments where fear nearly swallowed me whole. Yet, in the middle of all that darkness, I discovered something greater than fear: resilience. The kind of resilience that only comes from love. When I found out my son was alive, hidden away in a fight larger than himself, the relief was overwhelming. But so was the realization that he had trusted me to face the truth, to carry his secrets, and to survive long enough to see justice done. I may not have worn a badge or carried a weapon, but I became part of that battle. My courage mattered. My love mattered. If there's one lesson I carry from all of this, it's that we should never underestimate the power of a mother's heart. Grief can break you. Yes, but it can also make you fierce, unshakable, unwilling to surrender. Love doesn't just survive the hardest storms. Sometimes, it's what guides you through them. And maybe that's what I want to leave with you. That even in the darkest chapters, when everything feels lost, there is still a path forward. Family love, the real, honest kind, can stand against the worst betrayals and the deepest dangers. If my story has moved you, if it has made you reflect on your own strength or the love you hold for your family, I ask you to carry it with you. And if you feel compelled, share it. Leave your thoughts, your own lessons in the comments. Like this story, share it with someone who might need it, because sometimes the reminder that love and resilience can survive anything is exactly what another heart is waiting to hear.